Thank you for waiting. We would like to resume the session. This session is the panel discussion on preparing for cyber risk in the age of advanced technology. Let me introduce the panelists. President of SEMI Japan, we have Mr. Jim Hamajima. From National Institute of Information and Communications Technology and ICT, we have General Quantum ICT Collaboration Center Director, Dr. Mikio Fujiwara, and the moderator is from Google Japan, the head of Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, Mr. J. Uchiyama. So let's ask Mr. Uchiyama to proceed. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for attending this panel discussion. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome two panelists to move on with the panel discussion. My name is Uchiyama, the moderator of this panel session. Let me just briefly introduce myself. I am the head of Cybersecurity Center of Excellence of Google Japan. So for that background, I'm here to proceed. Now, this Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, we have three major topics. One is human resource development, because there is a global shortage of cybersecurity personnel. How Google contribute to this? And also policy dialogue. We have new technologies arising, such as AI. How can we make the best use of the technologies? What are the risks? How can we control them? In addition to that, the last piece, which is most important, is research. What kind of research do we need to carry out to contribute this area? We have specific technologies that are unique to this area in terms of cybersecurity. What can we do to contribute? So that is what our organization does, and I'm the head of that organization. In our business activities and in our personal lives, we are exposed to many new technologies. 30 years ago, smartphone was unprecedented, unthought of, but everyone, including children, have smartphones in their pockets. We have semiconductors and quantum technologies. We would like to look at new technology trends and their cyber risks. We have two experts with us today. So without further ado, I'd like to ask Mr. Hamajima to introduce yourself. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this online session, and thank you for inviting me this wonderful session. I'd like to introduce myself and my background. I graduated the university in Nagoya, and I started to work for an automotive company, but I wanted to go to the United States. That was my passion, to do business in the US. In the olden days, I focused on semiconductor production equipment because it gave me an opportunity to go to the United States. All of the university professors opposed to that idea. Everyone told me that I was lucky. So I joined the production equipment company. Looking back, semiconductor manufacturing equipment today are very much demanded, like bread, pizza. Bread maker does use equipment to bake bread. Obviously, when we create a semiconductor, we have to have semiconductor manufacturing equipment. We have several hundreds of kinds of equipment. So if you want to create a semiconductor, you have to buy materials, combine different recipes, and you have to, of course, purchase a manufacturing equipment. So about 40 years ago, when I joined this company, in terms of security, it's mainly about IT security. So engineers, maintenance engineer would go to equipment to repair, and in a clean room, you are supposed to look down on the floor because customer didn't want us to look at the manufacturing equipment. And they had these plastic partitions. So you simply have to go to a specific machine that needs repair. Don't look at any other equipment. But more recently, machines are connected with intranet, but not with internet. So I want to talk about that later on. Now, this SEMI is the Industrial Association. It's a global organization of semiconductor manufacturers. Silicon wafer standards, connection standards for equipment, to ensure safety and security of communication. It's a global organization creating global standards. And I joined this organization 6 years ago. And back then, professor of the university said that applying for subsidies from the national government, saying that we are making semiconductors, you will be rejected. So you have to give nicer, cool-sounding names other than semiconductors to ask for subsidies. But today, the subsidies are abundant. In the past few years, there has been a drastic change in terms of national government's policies. So I think it's a very good and nice, generous age we are ushered in. Thank you. Now I'd like to turn to Mr. Fujiwara, please.
Hello, and thank you very much for inviting me to a very wonderful conference. I'm very honored. I am belonging to the NICT, and I am a physicist. So cybersecurity, how much I will be able to contribute in offering a communication, I'm not that confident. But in terms of the information that I do have, I would like to share that with you. So in terms of NICT, it's located in Koganei in Kyoto. And in terms of what I belong to, in terms of Quantum ICT Collaboration Center in 2022, based on the quantum security, it is based upon as a designation of the ICT, and the hub of that. It has been initiated under the auspices. So in terms of some of utilizing quantum technology enabling quantum, such as quantum key distribution, to the future cyber risk, we would like to come up with a capability which would enhance us to protect us from the future threat. So that is my area of my expertise and research. So thank you very much. So thank you very much, Mr. Hamajima and Mr. Fujiwara. So Mr. Hamajima, you said that semiconductor. So Japan is going to be very strong in the area of semiconductor. You have gone through the experiences, and in the context of cybersecurity, what the implication is. And also, Mr. Fujiwara, in terms of the future that you talked about, in terms of quantum, the research subject of yours, the password, the concept of password is diluting. So various so-called trade industries is saying that doing away with password. So how are you going to guarantee without the password? And further down the road, so in the world of quantum, how are you going to guarantee security? So those are the area of Dr. Fujiwara's research. So we are hoping to learn a lot from these two gentlemen. So further ado, we'd like to go and delve into the panel. So first of all, Mr. Hamajima, I would like to ask you this question.
In our daily lives, there is no day that we do not use semiconductors. We have had advanced digitalization represented by smartphone. So we come in touch with semiconductors every day, and this is going to accelerate due to AI. AI can only be possible when we have semiconductors. So how do semiconductors impact our future? So in relation to that, I would appreciate your comments on this specific aspect. As you exactly mentioned, in our daily lives, semiconductors are essential, especially during COVID-19. We could not meet people in person, but we have this online technology to be connected with anybody in the world. Semiconductors are computing, communicating, storing information, And semiconductors made it possible. And as you can see on the slide, in every industry, in every area, semiconductors are utilized. Take a car. During the COVID-19, we were not able to supply cars. ECMO, for example, it was extremely difficult to procure semiconductors. So Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industries had a very difficult time. But today, generative AI is utilized increasingly by young people. My son's using it every day. Obviously, there are generational differences, especially when it comes to generative AI. The demand for it is increasing. And as a result, the number of semiconductors that will be sold is going to explode. Semiconductor had only 50 years of history. And 50 years ago or 60 years ago, ICs were created. And it took 60 years to come to the size of market today. But in 7 or 8 years going forward, the market is going to double. So it can grow as much as we had grown in 60 years. It's a major trend, a huge trend. The people are asking for semiconductors globally. And this increase in demand has just begun. What is interesting about the semiconductors is that we have so many of them. NVIDIA GPUs are so huge, so there are a limited number of semiconductors taken out of a wafer. But for Suica, we do actually take so many semiconductors. In other words, we have very good mass production effect. Each semiconductor will be very cheap, and everybody uses that to an increasing degree. And Uniqlo tag includes an IC that can calculate the price that you have to pay at the retail store. So when there are increasing semiconductors generated, it's more convenient, and people use more semiconductors, the market will grow. It's a very good positive cycle, which continued on for 60 years in the past, and in coming few years, the market size will double. So that's the market analysis today, especially because of Gen AI. Now, if you go to the next page, without this, none of this. So without semiconductor chips, agriculture or any other industries would not be able to survive. The well-being of people, in order to support that, we need semiconductors. We need more of these semiconductor chips. Thank you very much. I have a very simple question to Fujiwara-san.
Is there any other technology that will replace semiconductor right now? No. I should have some, sorry. Mr. Hamajima, excuse me. So basically, it's silicon-based. So therefore,
but if you need to have highest speed and low power consumption, think of GPUs. They are big power consumers, just like hair dryers. It heat up, so you have to cool that. It takes a lot of electricity to cool it. And people would say that you have to build a nuclear power plant close to server houses. So there are other ripple effects. Now, it could be silicon, it could be germanium. There are many different material alternatives, and that could also create new semiconductor technologies. But the question here is whether new materials have cost competitiveness. And in the future, optics might be utilized. Light has been explored as a new technology. NTT has ion technology. Probably in 10 years, maybe less, light can be utilized for communication, and light can be used for computation as well. So that is the expected change. The engineers from the world are looking at this new technology. Thank you very much. With that in mind, we have to have built a new nuclear power. We have to look at energy efficiency. So that is another key point. And another thing, beyond semiconductor, the use of light, photon. Thank you. Now, next, thank you, Mr. Hamajima. Now, I want to turn to Mr. Fujiwara.
Dr. Fujiwara, we've been talking about and hearing about semiconductor, and of course, quantum computing and quantum computer. So, in the future, semiconductor is so close to us; it's part of our everyday life. But quantum also will be part of our everyday life. So, what is the world that we foresee? So, I am not really exposed to quantum every day, but what does it mean? And what is the implication? I mean, I know the idea of computation will be much, much faster, but can you digest this for us? What future will we see in coming years? So can you share my slide, please? So quantum computer and computing is that's called quantum annealer is one of the type. So on this, the energy, of course, distribution, and it's finding the optimum route. Could be done very quickly with precision. So this year, the Nobel physicist, the original generative AI, the source of the idea, was given from the laureate. And this is conducted with quantum, very fast and very accurate. You'll be able to do the computational work. And on the slide, it's not listed here, but the full-scale quantum computing. So when you do the computing work, there is a device imperfection. So there may be some wrong answer. So in terms of rectifying the errors by quantum, the various calculation could be done by quantum computing. So quantum computing, what's good at it is finding the sort of a cycle. So it may be a negative information, but let's say in terms of internet, so in terms of RS key, but public key is a most relevant key. The safety is that the factoring is very difficult to do. And that is the reason why there are some security. But quantum computing, that in sort of the factoring could be done on the fly in terms of calculation and formula. So against that, in the future, any computer, whether or not it's secure sort of communication is possible or not, that's the question. So we have a quantum key distribution. Quantum is being utilized. So each one of them, there is a random data on each of them. So how, if there is a eavesdropping, let's say, on the quantum, we'll be able to morphologize the quantum, and the morphology of the quantum will be detected. And by utilizing them, whatever computer we may see, it is very safe and secure. So therefore, if you go into the next slide, not only telecommunication alone, but you create a network with it. So there is a sort of a protocol called secret sharing, and then having that on the protocol, data could be for a long duration of time. You'll be able to secure the data in the network. There is a high sort of advanced computer, meaning that the data will be able to utilize as a secondary use. That's the system that we are trying to establish. So in other words, in terms of on the experimental basis, we are already succeeding. So the genome data, leaving that and creating that to new drug discovery, in those cases, well, if it's cracked, let's say, there will be a lot of negative effect for a quite extensive scale. But if you leave it in this quantum technology, you can utilize them with security, a sense of security and safety. Thank you very much. So, Dr. Fujiwara, I would like to know from you. You said that utilizing quantum, telecommunications safety also could be enhanced, but not that alone. The data storage also with the quantum sort of encryption, you'll be able to guarantee safety. that's the technology, what it enables. Is that the correct understanding? Yes, exactly as you say, Ms. Uchiyama, not quantum alone, but the various accumulated encryption technology are all combined together. And in long duration of time, you can store the data, and yet you can, like in terms of secret sharing is converting into sharing in a safe manner. There is no place to store them. But with the network with quantum capability, that is going to be enabled. So the first time it is very safe theoretically. So you can store and communicate data with safety. So then that's a different, of course, initiative with doing away with password. Password is password, and there is another technology that replaces password. Well, is it inclusive of password? Well, there are a lot of technology, not only authentication, but this is a encryption. Authentication is the bio sort of authentication. And there are also, in terms of what you have said, if you have them in the cloud, the facial, if you are living, not dead, you can access if you have your facial biometrics. I see, I understand. So now I have a deeper understanding. So I would like to ask Dr. Fujiwara once again. So that technology, utilizing them. So today the topic is of course cyber risk. And how can we incorporate cyber risk in this factor? There are a lot of captions on newspapers and media about cyber risk, and there's a lot of tension globally, inclusive of Japan. And having said that, this is a big topic for all of us. So please share your insight on this topic, please. Thank you very much. So yes, can you go into the next slide? This is cyber risk. Well, not in itself, but 2013. The Snowden file have leaked this information. Snowden, you may have recalled that incident. In that cases, NSA is on the internet, SSL, TLS, the protocol, a telecommunication protocol that we utilize. So this is a backdoor to decrypt the encryption, and of course not reading the coding itself, but the telecommunication protocol. We utilize open source to create protocol. In the open source, they have created a backdoor, and the encryption, the secrecy and confidentiality have been made invalid. So NSA can observe and monitor all these communication lines. But against that, as I have explained already, in terms of a quantum key distribution, a very simple and yet very strong encryption protocol is a one-time pad. So by utilizing that, in terms of the original authentic exchange, you need hardware, but if you do them, even though there's a back door, you can still feel safe in the communication, even with the back door. So this is a test bed we have in 2010. We have been working on the quantum key distribution network, QKD network, and we're now doing a POC. In 2013, in December, with Nomura Holdings and Daiwa Securities and Mizuho Financial Group, we have direct link in 2023, December, in order to pursue the validity of this technology.
Thank you very much. So listening to your response, you talked about TLS key. SSL vulnerability is a problem, so we should not utilize SSL. The people have been saying that for many years, and TLS as well. By utilizing new technologies, you talked about high transparency. So a large organization may introduce backdoor, but because of the transparency, it will be exposed. So it's a technology to be able to solve that problem. Can I go back to my slide?
So in terms of high transparency, as alluded by Mr. Uchiyama, the official sort of authentic side person will be able to handle them. So outsider could not be able to handle. So in the sort of center, if it's an adversary, you can feel safe in the communication. So therefore, this technology in EU it's quite sensitive in these sort of risks. So in terms of quantum key distribution could also be embedded in satellite. So you can feel safe in the communication and autonomy. It guarantees autonomy of that communication. So even eavesdropping, let's say the civil citizens information, which is an asset for the state sort of actors trying to extract that information, we can protect that from them. So EU is also working hard on this area, and as well in Japan. And China is also working hard in the research of this area. So there are blocking from the interference on the outer state. We will be able to secure our domain. So I'm sorry to reiterate, but information security, the CIA, the confidentiality, and the versatility and completeness. So in terms of integrity, so of course confidentiality, integrity, but this is also being protected. Is that right? Yes, in completeness, integrity, authenticity. It of course can be guaranteed, not only because it's quantum, but the original, combining the original encryption, by adding that on, it's going to be further strengthened. So that is intent. Thank you very much. A lot of learning. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Hamajima, when it comes to cyber risks, I would be interested in your observation on cyber risks. If you look at semiconductor manufacturing, I have created a slide to explain the environment. There are three trends: oligopoly, and from global to regional, and also increasing investment. In 1980s and 90s, Japan was #1 semiconductor country. Electric appliance manufacturers are very strong. We had memory, logic technologies in Japan. But today, three major overseas companies are leading this market, not Japan. And these three companies represent majority of the share of the market. Because of the advanced technology level, it's very difficult to enter this market newly. And as you can see at the bottom, it requires a large amount of investment. Like I said, it's very important to mass produce, to produce volume. So we have to have many production machines. And equipment is also controlled by a few handful of companies. There is only one company in Netherlands who can create the state-of-art EUV technology is less than 7 nano. So it's the line width of the semiconductor circuit that can be drawn by this company alone. So the device manufacturers and equipment manufacturers are all handled or controlled by only a few companies. So that is one trend that we see in the semiconductor market. On the other hand, after the COVID-19, semiconductors' importance increased, and companies wanted to promote local consumption, local production, and this local initiatives are accelerated. According to new governments in various countries, they are promoting to develop their local semiconductor industry to be able to supply within their countries. And important parts and components are produced by factories that are concentrated in a very few regions in the globe. So with that in mind, if you go to the next page, in 2018, this was quite memorable. There was a major incident in Taiwan. According to the information that I received, this equipment was installed in a clean room, and you connect that. Of course, it's a closed space in a clean room, but this equipment became infected by ransomware, resulting in the damage of up to 19 billion Japanese yen. And we already had the data up to 2022. There are recorded cases, non-recorded cases. There are multiple incidents that are actually occurring until recently. So that's the situation of semiconductor manufacturing industries. But this industry is connected throughout the supply chain, as you can see on this slide. Japan is strong at semiconductor materials. If you are baking bread, you need wheat and oil. And there are many materials that you need to create semiconductors. And about half of the materials that are supplied globally come from Japan. So if you want to create a specific, unique semiconductor, and if you stop producing materials, half of the semiconductor manufacturing factories would not be able to keep producing semiconductors. So as we discussed earlier in the examples, it's not just major semiconductor manufacturers. The equipment that they use, components that are used in that manufacturing equipment, all of these can be exposed to cyber risk. If the risk emerges, the supply chain stops. In the past, we had second suppliers. You could turn to the alternate suppliers. But when we have regional completion of production and supply, I think there is an even bigger risk of the cyber attack. Thank you, Mr. Hamajima. I have an additional question. As you said at the end, and as you showed us the slide, of course, we have this trend of globalization for many years, and you want to pick a site for producing at low cost. You create this part here, another component somewhere else. Now, because of rising risk, there is a shift to local production, local consumption, being able to procure parts and components locally. And this is a risk that is recognized by multiple governments. And I think that is the background of the shift from global to regional. And at the end, something you said was confusing to me. So how it's going to impact Japan? So as I understand, it looks to me it's a good thing for us to be able to produce and consume in Japan. For the past 50 years, on a global level, supply chain emerged where it is suitable. There are multiple materials used. So there are areas that are good at manufacturing materials, equipment manufacturing, and energy supply may be stable because a lot of electricity and gases are necessary. So you would pick a best possible place to build the global semiconductor supply chain. But then this can be disrupted. Of course, we are not supporting the disruption of the global supply chain because we do respect free trade and protection of IP. So as far as we stick to fair play, I support the global supply chain. But in terms of economic security, there are emerging risks that a country may not be able to procure critical components. So you have to have a safety net. So because of that, in terms of a possible impact from cybersecurity, of course, you cannot procure everything internally or locally. Sometimes you have to import or purchase equipment from somewhere else. So cybersecurity could still be a major exposure. So that could be a bottleneck. So supply chain may be disrupted or decomposed, but still the supply chain is connected.
Thank you very much. In the rare earth, the supply, there are some issues, and we still see that in the media. But that led to the material and abundance of material. So we talked about in Japan, in semiconductor, in 50% of the raw materials, Japan is a supplier for the semiconductor industry. So coming back to the risk factor, so in terms of intellectual property, not only material, but Japan is not abundance in resources. So there may be attack going after IP, intellectual property, and that's a concern. And then I would like to also ask this question once again to Mr. Hamajima. So going after the IP, the adversary is not like ransomware. They're not financial objective. So very quietly coming in backdoor, and they are going to try to get information in long duration of time. They're stealth. So it's like a zero-day kind of attack that they may impose, not known by anyone, silently, the sneaking in and getting information. So what are the measures in order to avoid these attacks from the company in terms of alliances, communication, and also dialogue is also being needed. So from the company perspective, that voice that we hear from the private sector, it means as though that is a missing factor. How can we overcome this? From your perspective, Mr. Hamajima, let us hear from you.
So in our industry, a semiconductor industry, we have this global industrial association creating standards. As I said, back in 2018, we had a major incident that brought a major impact, as you can see on the screen. So there was a cyber incident in 2018. And after that, the industry has made a major action globally. In the following year, they started working on standard making to protect themselves from cyber attack. It would take time, but in January 2021, E188 standard was created by major Taiwanese and American companies to come up with industrial standards and supply chain that is connected globally, from small and medium-sized companies up to major equipment manufacturers, material manufacturers, and device manufacturers. Semiconductor production line, all of them were asked to follow and comply with these standards. And the education activities is still going on. Compared to the Western world, Japan's response was reserved. In the eyes of Taiwan and American counterparts, they thought Japan was slow in terms of taking actions. So globally, they set up cybersecurity consortium last year, at the end of last year, so that everyone will be involved in this effort in the semiconductor production lines. The ransomware attack that could be launched should be prevented, and we should be protected. So at the end of last year, when we organized Semicon Japan event, this year marks the 48th event at Tokyo Big Site, and very first cybersecurity forum was conducted last year, and next month on the 11th at Tokyo Big Site, we are going to organize the second cybersecurity forum. Cybersecurity-related key speakers are invited from all over the world. And this is how we organize our conference. So if you could go to the next page. I am not going to the details. E187 and E188 are standards that we created. If you look at target phases, as I said, semiconductor equipment is necessary to produce semiconductors. When installing those equipment, security should be checked. So that's security by design concept. So it's almost like a checklist. You would make sure the equipment that you are installing is safe. Equipment manufacturers and system integrators will have to follow this standard. Now, if you go to the users, E188 is created for production standard. To achieve malware-free equipment, device manufacturers are asked to follow these requirements. The minimum set of conditions to achieve needed safety level. The major Taiwanese companies would not accept the installation of equipment unless these conditions are met. So you need to comply with the standard. Equipment manufacturers in Japan would not be able to enjoy business from Taiwan. Going to the next slide. So we've created standards. We have to make sure these standards are utilized. Standards only discusses primitive, basic levels. So you need to enhance that. And that is why we came up with Semiconductor Manufacturing Cybersecurity Consortium, SMCC. And you see these are the participating companies. This consortium was created by SEMI. More than 50 companies are the members currently. On top, you would see the device manufacturers. The Intel, TSMC, Samsung are all there, followed by equipment OEMs, Tokyo Electron, ASML, and solution providers. IT-related solution providers are also participating. So we are all working together. What do we have to do in semiconductor production lines? So collaborating together will enhance our security level. Now on this last page, we have multiple activities. Factory is the key. So we are trying to implement cybersecurity in factories, and we also have standard development. And last week, Working Group 8 was newly created. This is about responding to Cyber Resilience Act. This is a new regulation coming in Europe. So it's a working group to respond to this new regulation in Europe. The key production, factory safety, and security is the key to improve. Thank you so much. I think we are running out of our time, but I'd like to move on to the last question. To Fujiwara-san.
So against the cyber risk, in your areas of expertise, what's the cause and how can we overcome this issue? The answer is quantum. This utilizing new technology would be able to overcome this hurdle. And when that will be, can I get your insight? Thank you. So can you share my slide? So this is in terms of quantum technology. The data could be stored and communicated very safely, and this is what I have explained already. For the implementation of that, there are some costs that will be incurred, and therefore, the end users, the request is that whether this is really usable. The test bed needs to be there to verify the technology. And the equipment, whether it's really safe or not, they need to be certified by the third party and get that system. So we at NIC, we are saying and confirming that the equipment is safe, but the third party also needs to verify that. At the same time, in a way, the word may not be good. It's a regulatory business, regulation of business. So those who are serious and honest, the cost tends to inflate. So taxation, motivation, some kind of incentives and subsidies will be endorsing this movement. So the financial data, Ganem data, and also clinical data the data local produce local consumption. That platform need to be created with our technology. So it's a limited function, but utilizing quantum technology, we hope that this is a promising way forward for all of us. Thank you very much. So Dr. Fujiwara, as a closing through this discussion today, anything that you may have recognized or any message to the viewers, please? Well, thank you. Regarding ransomware, Mr. Hamajima talked about through this presentation was very clear. So how quantum could be utilized for this very purpose? So within NICT, it's really cost. How can we able to have the quantum technology? Well, quantum is really a cluster of semiconductor. So in Japan, the supply chain could be established. So in terms of enhancing a competitive advantage against the world is something that we would need to do as a next step. Thank you very much. So Mr. Hamajima, please.
So listening to quantum computing, it's very hard for me to understand. Having said that, if you look at semiconductor production line and clean room, remote operation, and remote maintenance were desired, but there is always risk of connection. So as he explained, quantum communication is installed to ensure high security level. I would like to encourage the use of that. Make it easy for engineers to do a better job. Having said that, insurance needs to be considered as well. In order to prevent damage, you have to invest. So it's up to the management to make that decision. So the impact needs to be demonstrated. Connecting all kinds of industries, share that information. We have to continue to do the enlightenment and education activities. Thank you so much. Mr. Fujiwara and Mr. Hamajima, thank you for sharing your observations and knowledge. So if I would summarize this discussion, a fight against cyber risk continues. We talked about the supply chain risk. This is severe and very deep because if we want to take measures, it will take cost. So large companies, of course, do have financial resources to protect themselves. But look at smaller companies, maybe startup companies. These young companies, how could we force them to bear the same amount of burden? So how can we ensure that they will be able to take sufficient countermeasures against cyber risk? Eventually, it's not just one single company that does fight against a cyber risk. It's not the private company alone. As Mr. Hamajima said, it has to be a group of companies. They should work with associations developing standards. And as Fujiwara-san said, you could rely on research, and you have to go beyond that. In other words, at the research level, you could say this much security is guaranteed. But in order to go beyond that, you have to have the third party certificating that, establishing the security. And here comes the semiconductors again. Semiconductors can be very expensive, but if you have an increasing number of users, like the one that is used for Suica traveling cards, low cost, high volume produced chips will be available. So we can continue to turn a very good positive cycle. And this can be only implemented by a whole stakeholders. So we have to have a common protocol, common set of understanding. On top of that, we can work together. Unless otherwise, we'll not be able to overcome and solve this major issue of the global scale. Thank you for listening to us for a long time. We exceeded our time. We're sorry about that, but I hope that the information we discussed here is useful to all of the audience. So, Mr. Fujiwara, Mr. Hamajima, thank you so much. This is the end of the panel discussion.